In the grand cosmic scheme of things, there were few places more impressive than the orbital rings circling Earth. Of course, impressive was usually the word people used right before Death Trap. At least that's how Leora Vance liked to think of it. She was an intelligence officer, which was a fancy way of saying she poked her nose into things that would make anyone with a lick of sense run the other way. Her current mission was to navigate the labyrinthine wreckage of the orbital ring's fractured sections, which looked like a junkyard put through a blender, then sprinkled across the sky by a particularly malevolent toddler. Leora always did enjoy a challenge, maybe a little too much if her previous assignments were anything to go by. Still, there was something to be said for confronting chaos head-on, even if it usually only said, "Why the hell am I doing this?" "You could have been a farmer," Leora muttered to herself, sidestepping a bundle of exposed wiring hanging like the innards of some long-forgotten beast. "Cows don't try to kill you." Well, not most of the time. Her comms unit crackled to life with the voice of her partner, Jax, who was safely ensconced in the comfort of their ship's control room, nice and cozy, where stray bits of space debris wouldn't try to rearrange his face. "What's that, Vance?" "Something about cows. Just reminding myself why I'm not herding livestock on a backwater planet," Leora replied, her tone dry enough to make the Sahara seem like a rainforest. "Tell me again, why am I crawling through the ascent of space junk?" Jax chuckled, his voice a low rumble. "You volunteered, remember? Said something about needing excitement in your life." "Right," she said, ducking beneath another sparking wire. "Next time, remind me that only masochists and adrenaline junkies need apply." "Will do," Jax replied, the smile evident in his voice even over the crackling static. It wasn't all bad, though. Leora had a front-row seat to the freak show that was the current galactic political scene. Reports were coming in of strange behavior among the alien diplomats stationed near Earth. Something about them going insane. Fun times. No doubt it was connected to the telepathic disturbances that had been causing more than a few headaches, literally and figuratively. "You close to finding anything?" Jax asked, breaking her from her thoughts. "Define anything," Leora said, glancing around the dimly lit corridor where shadows played tricks on her eyes. "If you mean something useful, then no. If you mean more stuff that could kill me, then yeah, I'm surrounded." "Well, keep your eyes peeled," Jax said. "Command's getting antsy. They want answers." "Command always wants answers," Leora replied, carefully stepping over a precariously balanced pipe. "But they never like mine. Too much sarcasm and not enough ass-kissing, apparently." She continued her exploration, her mind a whirl of thoughts and half-formed theories. Telepathic aliens going insane was the sort of problem that sounded like the opening act of a really bad horror movie, or a fantastic opportunity for the universe to screw everyone over yet again. "You ever wonder why everything seems to be trying to kill us out here?" Leora asked, more to herself than Jax. "Because the universe hates us," Jax offered helpfully. "Yeah, that's what I thought," Leora said, shaking her head. It wasn't long before her footsteps took her to an area that looked like it had seen better days. And by better, she meant not currently on the brink of falling apart. The place was a mess. Scorched walls, bits of debris strewn like confetti at a failure party, and the faint odor of something that suggested a rodent-like creature had met its end somewhere nearby. "Lovely." "Leora, you're not gonna like this," Jax's voice came again, a smirk clear even through the distortion. "Scans are picking up some weird energy readings ahead." "Weird how?" Leora stopped, instinctively reaching for the sidearm at her hip. "Weird as in someone's been messing with things they shouldn't, could be connected to the telepathic disturbances." "Of course," Leora sighed, pressing forward. "Because nothing out here is ever simple." She moved cautiously, every sense on high alert as she ventured deeper into the section. The air grew colder, and the lights flickered with a persistence that was as irritating as it was unsettling. Rounding a corner, Leora found herself face to face with a sight that stopped her in her tracks, a room filled with alien diplomats, or what was left of their sanity. They were huddled together, their eyes wide and glassy, movements jerky and uncoordinated as if puppets with tangled strings. "We've got a problem," Leora whispered into her comm, trying to stay out of sight. "A big one." "What kind of problem?" Jax asked. "The kind that involves a bunch of alien VIP looking like they've gone completely mental." "Well, that's not good." "No, it's really not," Leora agreed, edging closer to get a better look without drawing attention. "They're acting like they're waiting for something. Or someone. Think it's connected to the telepathic disturbances." "I'd bet my last credit on it," Leora said, eyes narrowing as she took in the dismal scene. "And I hate gambling." The aliens were murmuring now, their voices a dissonant hum that made her skin crawl. She couldn't make out the words, but the tone sent a chill down her spine. "Whatever caused this, we need to figure it out fast," Jax said, urgency creeping into his voice. "High Command's breathing down my neck." "Tell High Command to take a number," Leora muttered. "I'm in the middle of something here." "I'll pass that along," Jax replied dryly. "Just stay safe, Leora." Easier said than done, she thought, watching the aliens with a mix of fascination and dread. Whatever had affected them wasn't something she wanted to experience firsthand. Taking a deep breath, she pulled out her data pad, activating the scanner. If there was one thing she was good at, it was piecing together puzzles. And this one was shaping up to be a doozy. But just as the scanner began its sweep, the lights flickered violently before plunging the room into darkness. Wonderful. Because dealing with insane telepaths wasn't enough fun with the lights on. Leora's heart raced as she switched to night vision. The room transformed into a spectral landscape of green and black. The aliens were still there, their movements eerily synchronized in the low light. "Leora, what's happening?" Jax's voice cut through the static of her comm. "We've lost lights," she hissed, moving to the nearest wall for some semblance of cover. "And the aliens are doing something." "Something?" "Yeah, something, and not the good kind." Suddenly, the alien murmur grew louder, a cacophony of sound that threatened to overwhelm her senses. It was like 1,000 whispers echoing in her skull, each one vying for attention. "I need you to get out of there," Jax said, his voice tight with worry. "Now." But Leora couldn't move, her eyes fixed on the strange, hypnotic dance of the telepaths. It was like watching a train wreck in slow motion, horrifying, yet impossible to look away from. Then, as if sensing her presence, one of the aliens turned its head, locking its gaze onto her with an intensity that sent a shiver down her spine. Its eyes glowed an unnatural blue, bright against the monochrome world of her night vision. "Oh shit," Leora breathed. "I think they've seen me." "Get out of there," Jax practically shouted. Leora didn't need to be told twice. She turned on her heel, sprinting back the way she'd come, heart pounding in her chest like a war drum. Behind her she could hear the aliens moving, their synchrony broken as they scrambled to follow. "Jax, get the ship ready," she gasped, feet pounding against the metal floor as she raced toward safety. "Already on it," Jax assured her. "Don't stop, Leora." She didn't plan on it. Whatever was going on here was way above her pay grade. Let Command handle the diplomatic fallout. She just wanted to get out with her skin intact. As she reached the corridor's end, Leora cast a glance back, catching a glimpse of the aliens rounding the corner, their movements erratic and frantic. "Next time," she panted, "I'm taking that farming gig." A burst of static filled her comm, Jax's voice breaking through as the ship's engines roared to life. "Just get back here, Vance. We've got a date with Command, and you know how much they love waiting." Yeah, Leora said, skidding to a halt in front of the airlock. "On my way." She punched the access code, the door sliding open with a hiss. Behind her, the sound of pursuit grew louder, a reminder of just how close she'd come to becoming an unwilling participant in whatever insanity had gripped the diplomats. "See you soon, Jax," she said, stepping into the safety of the airlock, the door sealing shut behind her with a reassuring clang. In the silence that followed, Leora allowed herself a moment to catch her breath, leaning against the cool metal of the bulkhead. The situation was bad, worse than she'd anticipated. Yet, as the adrenaline faded, A grim smile tugged at her lips. "Just another day in paradise," she muttered, pushing off the wall to make her way to the bridge. There was a report to file, and she had a feeling it was going to make for some interesting reading, at least for those with a taste for the absurd. "Here's hoping Command has a sense of humor," Leora said to herself, a wry chuckle escaping her lips. "Because they're not gonna like this one bit." The ship shuddered, engines thrumming beneath her feet as it broke free from the orbital ring's confines. Leora settled into her seat, her mind already racing with possibilities and theories. But one thing was certain: the mystery of the telepathic disturbances was far from solved, and whatever was coming, it promised to be anything but dull. "Bring it on," Leora whispered, eyes fixed on the stars beyond the viewport. "Let's see what you've got." The ship hummed with the grating familiarity of something that shouldn't be airborne but defied the odds anyway. Leora leaned back in her seat, letting out a breath she didn't remember holding. The bridge was a cluttered mess of tech gear, mismatched chairs, and people just as bedraggled as the space station they'd left behind. "Welcome back to the land of the living," Wex Ryden greeted her, his voice a blend of sarcasm and genuine relief. He was the kind of tech specialist who could make a toaster sing and dance if he felt like it. Just don't ask him to fix anything the right way. "Living, sure. Sanity, questionable," Leora replied, rolling her shoulders to ease the tension. "What did I miss? Besides your graceful escape from a room full of crazy aliens, not much." That was Dr. Anya Malik, their resident quantum physicist. Her dry humor was as sharp as the equations she scribbled on any available surface. "We've got a minor cosmic riddle on our hands." "Cosmic riddles are my favorite," Leora said with a grin that was more grimace. "What do we know?" Anya tapped her data pad, projecting a hologram in the air between them. It was a swirling mess of colors and numbers, the kind that made most people's eyes glaze over but was Anya's idea of a good time. "The telepathic disturbances aren't random," Anya explained, her finger jabbing at the colorful chaos. "They're fragmented human thoughts." "Well, that explains the insanity," Leora said, raising an eyebrow. "Aliens picking up on our mental static can't be healthy." "Not just unhealthy, it's chaos," Wex added, running a hand through his mess of dark hair. "Imagine trying to tune into a radio station and getting 100 channels at once. Total brain meltdown." "Great, so we're the universe's worst DJ," Leora muttered. "But why now? What triggered it?" "That's the million-credit question," Anya replied, rubbing the bridge of her nose. "And the answer is probably going to make us wish we'd never asked." Leora leaned back, thinking about the scene she'd just fled. The aliens hadn't been hostile, not exactly. They were more confused than anything, like someone had shaken their brains and left them to figure out which way was up. "So, we're screwing with their heads without even trying," Leora said. "Is there a way to stop it?" Wex shrugged, tinkering with a piece of equipment that looked like it belonged in a museum. "There's always a way. Just depends on how many rules you want to break." "Rules?" Leora snorted. "I'm not on speaking terms with rules." "Then we might have a chance," Anya said, a ghost of a smile on her lips. "But it's not going to be easy. We need to isolate the frequency of the human brain waves and find a way to dampen them, all without frying our own circuits." "Piece of cake," Leora said, sarcastic optimism her only defense against the absurdity. "We've done way worse." The ship lurched slightly, a reminder of its ongoing battle with gravity or lack thereof. Leora took a moment to appreciate the irony. They were floating in the middle of a metal death trap trying to fix a problem caused by their very existence. Typical Tuesday. "So, how do we start?" Leora asked, crossing her arms as she scanned the room. "And more importantly, how do we do it without blowing ourselves up?" Wex shot her a lopsided grin. "We could use a signal dampener. I've got a few prototypes lying around. They're not exactly legal, but they might work." "Did you say illegal tech?" Leora smirked. "You know how to get a girl's attention. Illegal or not, we need something," Anya interjected, eyeing the schematics with a mix of determination and skepticism. "The longer the aliens are exposed to our brain waves, the worse it'll get. We're talking full-scale interplanetary incident. I'll handle command, Leora said, not looking forward to that particular conversation. You two work on the dampener. We've got to get this under control before things get any uglier. On it, Wex said, already diving into a pile of gadgets that would have given a customs officer a heart attack. Anya nodded, her focus shifting to her calculations. Let's get to work then. Time's not on our side. As the two of them set to their tasks, Leora slipped out of the bridge, her mind already crafting the half-truths she'd need to feed high command. It was an art form, really, the way she danced around the truth while not technically lying. They wanted answers, she'd give them answers. They just might not be the ones they were expecting. The corridor outside was quiet, the hum of the ship a constant companion. Leora paused for a moment, staring out a small viewport at the swirl of stars beyond. In the grand scheme of things, their problems were a blip, a tiny speck in a universe that couldn't care less. But to her, and to the people on that station, it was everything. One crisis at a time, she muttered to herself, pushing off the wall and heading for the comms room. Let's see how much trouble we can get into today. The comms room was a cramped space, filled with screens and blinking lights that gave it the feel of a particularly aggressive Christmas display. Leora dropped into the chair, activating the secure line to command. It was time to play the game. Leora Vance, reporting in, she said as the screen flickered to life, revealing the stern face of Commander Trask. Vance, Trask said, cutting straight to the point as always. What's the situation? Complicated, Leora replied, leaning back with a casualness that belied the tension in her gut. We've identified the source of the disturbances. It's human brain waves intersecting with alien telepathic frequencies. Trask's expression could have curdled milk. And the cause? Still working on it, Leora said, keeping her tone neutral. We've got our best people on it. Your best people? Trask's voice was a mix of disbelief and condescension. This is a diplomatic nightmare. We need results, not excuses. Excuses? Leora arched an eyebrow. We're dealing with a situation that's got impossible written all over it, and you want results yesterday. How about you let us do our jobs and we'll get you those results before the universe implodes? Trask glared at her from the screen, a muscle in his jaw twitching. Leora didn't flinch. She'd faced down worse than Trask on a bad day. You've got 24 hours, Vance, Trask said finally, his voice like ice. Get it sorted. 24 hours, Leora repeated, nodding. Piece of cake. The screen went dark and Leora let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. It was a gamble, giving herself such a tight deadline, but she thrived under pressure. Besides, it wasn't like she had much of a choice. The universe didn't exactly wait for anyone to catch up. She returned to the bridge to find Wex and Anya deep in discussion, the table between them covered in parts that looked like the aftermath of a botched science fair project. How's it going? Leora asked, taking her usual spot at the table. We might have something, Wex said, holding up a device that looked suspiciously like a toaster with extra bits glued to it. It's not pretty, but it should do the trick. Leora raised an eyebrow. I'm sure it's beautiful on the inside. Let's just hope it works, Anya added, eyeing the contraption as if it might explode at any moment. Plan? Leora asked, looking between them. We'll have to get it close to the source of the disturbance, Anya explained, tapping the hologram that still hovered above the table. There's a central node in the ring that amplifies the telepathic signals. If we can dampen the interference there, it should break the feedback loop. And how do we get it there without getting mobbed by psychotic aliens? Leora asked, ever the optimist. That's the tricky part, Wex admitted. But if we can get you close enough, the device has a remote activation. You just need to plant it and get out. Plant it and get out, Leora repeated, nodding. Simple enough. Except for the part where you might end up dead, Anya pointed out, her expression serious. Yeah, except for that, Leora agreed with a shrug. But when has that ever stopped us? They spent the next few hours fine-tuning the device, double-checking calculations, and generally trying not to think about how badly things could go wrong. Leora knew the risks, knew the stakes, and yet there was a part of her that relished the challenge. Maybe she was crazy too, but there was no place she'd rather be. As they prepared for the mission, Leora found herself pacing the bridge, her mind running through contingencies and worst-case scenarios. It was a habit she couldn't shake, the need to be ready for anything even when everything was chaos. "Ready?" Wex asked, tossing her a compact, no-nonsense helmet that looked like it had seen a few too many bar brawls. "Born ready," Leora replied, securing the helmet and checking her gear. Anya joined them, her own kit slung over one shoulder. "Let's fix this mess." "Let's," Leora agreed, leading the way to the airlock. The journey back to the orbital ring felt like a descent into madness. The ship vibrated with tension, the crew beneath a veneer of bravado that couldn't quite mask the fear. Leora understood it. They were heading into the unknown, armed with little more than duct tape and optimism. "Just another day in paradise," she murmured as they docked, the airlock hissing open with a sense of finality. The corridors were as she'd left them, dark and foreboding. Only now they felt more like a waiting trap. Leora moved quickly, conscious of the time ticking away, aware that every second was another chance for things to spiral further out of control. As they approached the central node, the air hummed with a tangible energy, a reminder of the power at work here. Leora could almost feel the thoughts buzzing around her, a cacophony of noise that made her skin crawl. "Here," Wex said, pointing to a panel that looked like it had been designed by someone with a personal vendetta against simplicity. Leora took the device, her hands steady despite the tension thrumming through her. "Let's hope this works. If it doesn't, we're screwed," Anya said, deadpan as always. "Comforting," Leora replied, setting the device in place and stepping back. "All right, hit it." Wex activated the remote, the device sparking to life with a low hum that quickly grew in intensity. Leora held her breath, watching as the lights flickered and the air seemed to still, the oppressive weight of mental noise gradually lifting. "It's working," Anya breathed, her relief palpable. "Yeah," Leora said, a grin spreading across her face. "Yeah, it is." They didn't linger, retracing their steps with a speed born of adrenaline and the knowledge that, for once, they'd managed to pull off the impossible without blowing themselves up. Back on the ship, Leora let out a laugh, the kind that felt like freedom. "We did it, for now," Wex said, clapping her on the shoulder. "But let's not make a habit of it." "Agreed," Anya added, looking more relaxed than Leora had ever seen her. As the ship set a course for command, Leora allowed herself a moment of quiet satisfaction. They'd managed to avert disaster, at least for now. The universe might still be a chaotic mess, but today they'd managed to turn the tide. "Let's see what tomorrow brings," she murmured, looking out at the stars once more. Whatever it was, she'd be ready. Leora barely had time to savor their small victory before the universe decided to throw another wrench into the works. Because why let a moment of triumph go uninterrupted when you could be neck-deep in another crisis, right? It was like the cosmos had a personal vendetta against her ever getting more than 5 minutes of peace. "What's that smell?" Jax's voice crackled over the comms, sounding more amused than alarmed, a tone only someone not in the direct line of fire could muster. "Just the sweet aroma of impending disaster," Leora replied, nudging a piece of loose wiring out of her way as she made her way back to the bridge. As she stepped inside, the usual clutter seemed more oppressive than usual, the chaos of wires and tech like a metaphor for her life. Wex and Anya were already there, their expressions doing a poor job of masking concern. "We've got a problem," Wex announced, as if they were ever short on those. "Is it bigger than the last one?" Leora asked, dropping into her chair with the grace of a sack of potatoes. "Or are we just collecting them like grim trophies?" "Bigger," Anya said, hands on hips, her tone making it clear that if sarcasm was an Olympic sport, she'd have the gold. "Someone's been tampering with the nodes on the orbital ring." "Sabotage?" Leora asked, because apparently things could always get worse. "Looks like it," Wex confirmed. "We've got evidence of someone manually rerouting telepathic frequencies. Someone who knows what they're doing, more or less." "Great," Leora sighed, running a hand through her hair. Just what we needed, an amateur saboteur with delusions of competence. And it's not just the nodes, Anya added, pulling up a hologram. They've been playing with the dampener's primary systems too. Whoever it is, they've got an agenda, and it's not exactly peace and harmony. Leora considered this, trying to keep her frustration from boiling over. It was like being in a never-ending game of cosmic whack-a-mole, except the moles had unionized and were coming at her with tiny hammers. So, she said, leaning back, we've got some charming individual trying to spark an interstellar incident by poking the bear, or in this case, the entire alien race. Any idea who? Nothing concrete, Wex admitted. But I'd bet my last unbroken spanner it's someone from the inside. Of course it is, Leora muttered, staring at the flickering screens as if they might offer some magical solution. Because we can't just have external enemies. We've got to manufacture them in-house too, like some kind of crappy DIY villain kit. Wouldn't be the first time someone in the orbital ring got delusions above their station, Anya commented, cynicism dripping from her words. Remember the great coffee caper of '79, Leora grimaced at the memory. The less said about that incident, the better. So what's the plan? Aside from tearing out my hair and screaming into the void, we find the saboteur, Wex said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world, and we stop them before they can do any more damage. Sounds simple enough, Leora said with a shrug, as if they hadn't just run face first into a wall of complexity. All right then, let's take out the trash. They spent the next few hours combing through logs and security footage. The bridge transformed into a makeshift war room. Every flicker of movement, every shadow, every anomalous reading was scrutinized with the kind of intensity usually reserved for last-minute exam cramming. It was Anya who finally hit pay dirt. Gotcha, she said, pointing at a figure on the screen, cloaked in shadows and the kind of aura that screamed up to no good. Check this out. Leora squinted at the grainy footage. Who the hell is that? And why do they move like they've been taking clandestine classes in dramatic lurking? Too blurry to make out specifics, Wex said, tapping away at his console. But they've got a pattern. Looks like they're hitting specific nodes every few hours. Could be a routine, could be a trap. Or they're just really committed to their cardio, Leora suggested, crossing her arms. Either way, we need to catch them in the act. Agreed, Anya said, her focus unwavering. We set a trap, lure them out, make them think they've got the upper hand. Which is always a fun bluff, Leora said. The classic look over here, not over their routine. It was a plan born of desperation. But then again, those often work the best. They set up shop in a section of the orbital ring that had seen better days. The tech there cobbled together in a way that would have made a safety inspector break out in hives. Feels like we're fishing with dynamite, Jax quipped over the comms. Except, more potential for catastrophic failure. Best kind of fishing, Leora replied, eyes scanning the dim corridor. Nothing like the threat of imminent death to keep things interesting. Hours ticked by with the kind of agonizing slowness that made every minute feel like an eternity. The air was thick with tension and the faint smell of burnt circuitry, a charming blend that Leora had come to associate with high-stakes improvisation. And then movement. There, Wex whispered, eyes glued to the monitor. The figure was back, moving with the kind of confidence that suggested they either knew exactly what they were doing or had been hitting the space vodka a little too hard. All right, Leora murmured, eyes narrowing. Showtime. The saboteur approached the node unaware of their audience. It was almost too easy, and that's what made Leora's skin itch with suspicion. As if sensing her unease, Anya shot her a look. Watch your backs, Anya said, her voice barely a breath. I don't like how easy this is. Ditto, Leora replied, muscles tensing as she prepared to confront the intruder. The saboteur bent over the node, tools in hand, and for a moment Leora felt a pang of pity for the poor fool who thought they could get away with this. Then she remembered the stakes and steeled herself. She moved quietly, stepping from the shadows like a ghost with a grudge. Hey there, she said, her voice cutting through the silence like a knife. Lose something, The saboteur spun around, surprise giving way to a flicker of something else, something dangerous. Their face was obscured, but Leora didn't need to see it to know they were trouble. "You're in over your head," the figure said, voice distorted, probably deliberately. "Back off." "Sorry," Leora said with a smirk, "but quitting isn't in my job description. Besides, you're trespassing on my orbital ring." The saboteur hesitated, and in that moment of indecision, Leora saw her opening. She lunged forward, catching them off guard. The struggle was brief but intense, a flurry of limbs and desperation. Leora managed to wrest the tool from their grasp, sending it skittering across the floor. Wex and Anya were there in an instant, closing in like a pair of wolves on a wounded prey. The saboteur squirmed, but they were outnumbered and outmatched, a fact that seemed to dawn on them with sudden, crushing inevitability. "Now," Leora said, panting slightly. "Why don't you tell us who sent you before things get uglier than my last diplomatic meeting?" The saboteur kept silent, but the defiance was clear in their stance, a stubbornness that would have been impressive under different circumstances. Leora motioned to Wex, who began rummaging through the saboteur's belongings with the kind of thoroughness usually reserved for border checks. "Look at this," Wex said, producing a small device that looked like it had been cobbled together from a nightmare of spare parts. "Pretty fancy for a DIY job, wouldn't you say?" "Definitely not something you pick up at the corner shop," Anya agreed, inspecting the device with a critical eye. "Who are you working for?" The saboteur finally spoke, the distortion in their voice lending an eerie quality to their words. "You think you've won, but this is just the beginning." "Ah, cryptic threats," Leora said, shaking her head. "I love those almost as much as getting my teeth pulled." "We're not letting you or your friends turn this into an interstellar incident," Wex added, his tone hardening. "So start talking." There was a pause, then a low chuckle from the saboteur. "You don't get it. This isn't about you. It's about sending a message." "Funny," Leora said, leaning closer. "I've got a message too. Don't mess with the people trying to keep this bucket of bolts from falling apart." The saboteur shifted, clearly weighing their options, but Leora could see the writing on the wall. This wasn't going to end with a neat confession and a pat on the back. Just then an alert blared through the corridor, the harsh sound echoing off the walls, setting everyone's nerves on edge. Something big was happening, something that took precedence over their little tete-a-tete. "What now?" Anya muttered, glancing at her wrist console. Her face paled, a sight that made Leora's stomach drop. "Another disturbance," Wex said, checking his own readouts. "Bigger than before." "If that's possible." "Looks like your friends couldn't wait," Leora said, releasing the saboteur with a shove. "But you're staying right here until we sort this out." They didn't wait for a reply, heading back to the ship at a run. Behind them, the saboteur's laughter followed, a haunting sound that clung to Leora's mind like a bad rash. Back aboard, the ship was alive with activity, the crew moving with a precision born of panic and necessity. The monitors showed chaos unraveling, telepathic feedback looping out of control, threatening to tear apart what little semblance of stability remained. "We need to get this under control," Jax's voice crackled over the comms. "Or we're looking at a full-scale system meltdown." "Fantastic," Leora said, taking her seat and pulling up every available screen. "Just what we needed, a telepathic fireworks show. We can't let this spread," Anya said, her fingers flying over her console. "If the aliens pick up on this, it'll look like an attack." "Then we stop it," Wex said, determination stealing his voice. "We've got the dampener. We just need to push it to full capacity." "Full capacity might blow us to hell," Jax pointed out. "Correction," Leora said. "Full capacity will blow us to hell, but hey, at least we'll go out with a bang." "Are we seriously considering this?" Anya asked, incredulous. "We don't have a choice," Leora replied. "Unless anyone's got a better idea." Silence met her question, a silence filled with the weight of inevitability. They all knew the risks, but they also knew the stakes. It was do or die, and Leora was nothing if not a fan of dramatic finales. "All right then," she said, steeling herself for the task ahead. "Let's play with fire." They worked in tandem, each move calculated, each second crucial. The ship groaned under the strain, the machinery protesting as the dampener was pushed beyond its limits. Leora could almost feel the heat of the circuits threatening to melt down around them. "Almost there," Wex said, his voice tight with concentration. "More like almost dead," Jax commented, but there was a note of grim determination in his words. "Just hold it together a little longer." The air was electric, the tension a living thing that coiled around them. Leora's heart pounded in her chest with the kind of intensity that made her wonder if it might just give up and quit altogether. And then, like a switch being flipped, the noise stopped. The feedback loop dissipated, and the silence that followed was almost deafening in its relief. "We did it," Anya breathed, her voice barely a whisper, as if speaking too loudly might undo their work. "Yeah," Leora said, slumping back in her seat, exhaustion washing over her. "Yeah, we did." But even as the relief set in, Leora knew this wasn't over. The saboteur's words echoed in her mind, a reminder that they'd merely won a battle, not the war. "Let's regroup," she said, rubbing her temples. "Figure out our next move before the universe throws another curveball. And maybe get a drink." Wex suggested. The air in the bridge felt like it was clinging to Leora's skin, thick with the acrid scent of burnt circuits and bad decisions. They'd cobbled the tech back together, but it felt like taping a broken vase and hoping it holds water. The monitors showed a rapidly fluctuating mess of colors and numbers, telepathic disturbances gone haywire. A typical Tuesday, Leora thought, except this time the aliens weren't sending over bad poetry. It was more like cosmic angry tweets. "These damn telepaths are cracking faster than my Nan's old porcelain," Leora muttered, staring at the chaotic holograms. "What now, Doctor? Brainiac, Doctor." Anya Malik looked up from her console, her expression caught somewhere between a smirk and a grimace. "We could always try turning it off and on again." "Oh wait, that's my advice for everything. You should put that on a motivational poster," Jax chimed in over the comms, his voice reverberating with static and sarcasm. "Hang it in your office next to the hang in their kitten. Or we could just smack it with a wrench," Wex added, looking far too eager as he waggled an actual wrench in his hand. "Always worked for me." Leora shook her head, a wry smile tugging at her lips despite the dire situation. "Seriously, any real ideas?" "Before we become the universe's most explosive fireworks display," Anya tapped at her console, the screens flickering under her fingers. "What about using quantum interference to shield their minds? Block out the static and buy us some time." "Quantum interference?" Jax chuckled, the sound more resigned than amused. "You mean that thing that's supposed to be theoretical? Like a unicorn with a physics degree. Got any better ideas, Jax?" Leora snapped, her patience wearing thinner than the hull plating. "Because I'm open to suggestions, preferably ones that don't end with us as space debris." All right. Jax's voice was light, but there was a hint of seriousness creeping in. "Just keep in mind we screw this up, and we're one step closer to making alien enemies. And I like my enemies like I like my drinks, weak and far away." Leora ignored the jibe, her mind already whirling through the logistics. "Wex, can we rig something up to amplify the interference?" Wex, still holding his wrench like it was a magic wand, nodded. "Might be able to slap something together. Just need to raid the parts bin and hope for the best." "Raid away," Leora said, "but do it fast. Our timeline's tighter than a miser's purse." Anya leaned back in her chair, a thoughtful frown on her face. "You realize this is all speculative. We could end up frying their brains instead of saving them." "Then let's aim not to make alien omelets," Leora replied, rubbing her temples. "I've had enough interstellar incidents to last a lifetime." The bridge door slid open with a hiss, and in stepped one of the last people Leora wanted to see, Commander Cole. He was the kind of man you'd expect to find lurking in the margins of a bad spy novel, all sharp angles and sharper looks. "Leora," Cole said, his voice smooth and oily as ever, "I hear you're planning on playing with quantum interference." "Sounds risky." Leora crossed her arms, meeting his gaze with a steady defiance. "Everything's risky these days. Breathing's risky. But I figure it's less risky than letting the aliens think we're cooking up a new war." Cole's smile was thin, like a line drawn in poisoned ink. "Careful, Vance. We don't all share your appetite for chaos. No, some of you prefer a nice buffet of bureaucracy," Leora returned, her tone as sharp as a blade. "Look, Cole, we don't have time for your usual song and dance. Either help or get out of the way." Cole's eyes flickered with something dark. "There's already talk among the crew. Whispers that maybe this isn't about peace at all, that maybe you've got your own agenda," Leora snorted. "Yeah, my agenda is not getting blown out an airlock. Call me crazy, but that seems like a pretty good plan." "Keep telling yourself that," Cole said, the words a soft warning. "But don't be surprised if more people start questioning your decisions." With that, he turned on his heel and strode out, leaving a trail of tension in his wake. Leora glared at the spot where he'd stood, resisting the urge to throw something after him, preferably something heavy and metallic. "Great," she muttered. "Now we've got politics in the mix. Just what we needed." Anya rolled her eyes. "Every ship needs its own little soap opera. Keeps morale up or some nonsense like that." "Yeah, well, I'd rather have a drink," Leora grumbled. "But I guess saving the universe comes first." Wex had already slipped back out, presumably to raid the parts bin like a kid let loose in a candy store. Leora and Anya got to work, poring over the data that scrolled incessantly across their screens, each piece a potential disaster waiting to unfold. "How'd we get into this mess again?" Leora asked, not really expecting an answer. "Oh yeah, by trying to be the good guys." "Always a questionable life choice," Anya agreed, tapping away. "But at least it's never boring." They worked in silence for a while, the soft hum of the ship and the distant chatter of crew voices creating a backdrop of uneasy calm. It was the eye of the storm, and Leora could feel it in her bones, a calm that wouldn't last, not with the kind of chaos they were courting. Eventually, Wex returned, arms full of cables, circuits, and miscellaneous bits that looked like they'd been pilfered from a scrapyard. "All right, I've got the stuff. Now let's see if we can make magic without blowing up." "Good," Leora said, nodding. "Let's get to it." As they worked, the tension in the room grew thicker, each second ticking by like a countdown. Leora could feel the crew's eyes on her, could sense the whisper of doubt creeping in at the edges. She pushed it aside, focusing on the task at hand. There was no room for doubt, not now. Jax's voice crackled over the comms, cutting through the silence. "How's it going over there? You lot need a cheerleader." "Sure," Leora replied, not looking up from the mess of wires and circuits. "But only if you're wearing the skirt." "Deal," Jax shot back. "I've got great legs anyway," Wex snorted, but there was no humor in it. "Just keep us updated, Jax. We're flying blind here." "Roger that. And remember, don't cross the streams." Leora had no idea what Jax meant, but she was too tired to care. She just hoped whatever they were cobbling together would hold long enough to get them out of this mess. It was a hope rooted more in desperation than certainty, but at this point she'd take what she could get. As they worked, the lights flickered ominously. A bad omen, Leora thought, but then again, omens were like opinions. Everyone had one and most were garbage. "Ready when you are," Wex said, his voice taut with anticipation. Leora took a deep breath, steeling herself. "All right, let's see if we can pull this off without sending ourselves to the afterlife." "Good luck," Anya said, her tone light, but the gravity in her gaze telling a different story. Leora flipped the switch, and for a moment the world held its breath. The ship hummed with power, the machinery vibrating under the strain. Leora could feel it in her bones, the quantum interference spreading through the nodes, a ripple of energy that danced on the edge of disaster. The monitors flared to life, the chaotic holograms stabilizing, the telepathic disturbances dimming to a manageable level. Relief washed over Leora, a heavy weight she'd been carrying for too long slipping away. "It's working," Wex said, his voice tinged with awe. "We're actually doing it." "Yeah," Leora said, a smile breaking through the exhaustion. "For now, anyway." But even as the victory settled in, Leora knew it was a temporary reprieve. The real battle was still ahead, the quiet before the storm, and it wouldn't be long before the universe threw another curveball their way. Let's regroup, Leora said, echoing her earlier sentiment. Figure out our next move before Cole and his merry band of doubters decide to stage a mutiny. And how do we handle the telepaths? Anya asked, her gaze hard and unyielding. Carefully, Leora replied, the weight of the situation settling back onto her shoulders. One step at a time. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with danger and the kind of challenges that would test them to their limits. But Leora Vance was nothing if not resilient. And if the universe thought it could break her with a few well-aimed punches, it had another thing coming. Because Leora had learned long ago, life was a fight. And she sure as hell wasn't going down without swinging. The bridge was a chaos of flashing lights, frenzied chatter, and the kind of tension you could slice with a butter knife, assuming you had any knives aboard, which they didn't. Leora adjusted her comms unit, trying to ignore the persistent itch at the back of her skull, an itch that felt suspiciously like impending disaster. Telepathic disturbances, mutated thoughts crawling around in their heads like unwanted house guests, were sending the aliens into a tizzy. Leora could already picture the diplomatic reports. Humans, good at parties, bad at not accidentally broadcasting their internal monologues. Bad news from the front lines. Jax crackled over the comms, his voice an unwelcome reminder of their grim prospects. The alien envoys are pulling out faster than a gambler from a losing table. Can't blame them, Leora replied, her voice a blend of sarcasm and exhaustion. We're about as stable as a drunk on a unicycle. Anya shot her a look over the rim of her monitor. Don't underestimate the inherent stability of a drunk. They have a funny way of defying the laws of physics. Maybe we should employ some drunks then, Wex muttered, fiddling with a circuit board that looked like it had seen better days. Couldn't hurt. Keep it together, team, Leora barked, though she felt about as steady as a sandcastle in a tsunami. We've got to get these telepathic disturbances under control before the aliens decide we're not worth the hassle. The idea of being more trouble than they were worth wasn't new to Leora. She'd spent a career proving her value in a universe that seemed hell-bent on proving otherwise. But with the aliens backing away like they'd caught a whiff of something unpleasant, their options were rapidly dwindling. We need another plan, Leora announced, the words tasting like ash. Maybe we should try a dance-off. Wex suggested, only half joking. We've got lights and I'm sure Jax has some tunes. Yeah, let's distract them with the oldest trick in the book. Interpretive dance, Anya shot back, rolling her eyes. You've really outdone yourself, Wex. Jax's voice cut through the banter with a serious edge. Whatever we do, we need to do it fast. The aliens are acting like we're carrying the cosmic plague. If they think a war's brewing, we're a blip away from being galactic pariahs. Let's focus on what we can control, Leora said, though control felt like a distant memory, lost somewhere between their first malfunction and their last bad decision. Wex, how's the interference rig holding up? Wex grimaced, the expression not filling Leora with confidence. Barely. The thing's held together with spit and wishful thinking. I've seen better odds at a 2-bit casino. Great, Leora snapped. So we're betting the farm on Howe's odds. The air was thick with expectation. Each failed attempt to manage the telepathic static another nail in their coffin. And with each nail, the weight of responsibility settled heavier on Leora's shoulders. Anya's fingers flew over her console, her brow furrowed in concentration. We could try recalibrating the dampener's primary systems. Maybe a fresh angle will stabilize things, or we blow another fuse and send us all to Kingdom Come, Wex muttered, but he started working on it anyway. Leora pinched the bridge of her nose, wishing she could pinch away reality just as easily. Can't you just be optimistic for once? Pessimism is just optimism with better judgment, Wex replied, his tone too dry to be anything but sincere. All right, Leora conceded. Let's see if we can cobble together something resembling a solution, or at least delay the inevitable until after lunch, Anya sighed, the sound full of the kind of resigned determination that only comes from knowing there's no quick fix. If we fail, at least we'll take comfort in being the most spectacular failure this side of the solar system. Go big or go home, Jax quipped, his voice a distorted echo. And since home's not an option, the team worked in a tense silence, each click and buzz from the equipment another reminder of how close they were skating to the edge. Leora tried not to think about what would happen if they failed, but it loomed large in her mind, a shadow she couldn't shake. The lights flickered again, a mocking reminder of their precarious situation. Leora could almost hear the universe laughing at them, the sound a cruel blend of cosmic inevitability and bad timing. Jax's voice crackled over the comms, softer now. "You holding up, Leora, depends on your definition of holding up," she replied, her voice brittle. "We're making it up as we go along and hope's not exactly paying dividends. Hell of a thing, isn't it?" Jax said, a note of camaraderie in his tone, "But we've been through worse, have we?" Leora asked, not entirely convinced. "Well," Jax drawled, "maybe not worse, but definitely dumber." Wex chuckled dryly. "Dumb we can do. We're great at dumb. Hey, if being dumb was a competition, we'd have more medals than the Olympics," Leora added, trying to summon humor from somewhere deep inside. Anya tapped her keyboard, her focus absolute. "All right, I think I've got it. We can try this recalibration, but it's a bit like throwing spaghetti at a wall and hoping it sticks. Good thing I like Italian," Wex muttered, wiring a piece of equipment with the deftness of someone who knew disaster intimately. "Let's do it," Leora said, her voice steady with the kind of resolve that came from having no other choice. "Everyone ready, ready as we'll ever be," Anya replied, though her tone suggested readiness was a spectrum. With a final breath, Leora nodded to Anya, who pressed a sequence of buttons that sent the machinery humming. The ship vibrated subtly as they juggled the quantum interference, a delicate balance that could topple with a sneeze. For a moment, nothing happened. Leora held her breath, tensing as if bracing for impact, expecting some fresh catastrophe to descend upon them. Then, the lights on the bridge dimmed to a muted glow, the machinery quieting to a low, steady hum. A hesitant glance at the monitors revealed the disturbances were stabilizing, less a hurricane, more a drizzle. "We've got partial stabilization," Anya announced, not quite believing it herself. "Partial's better than nothing," Wex added, though his voice carried the weight of impending failure. Leora felt a flicker of hope, small, fragile, like a candle in a hurricane. She clung to it, knowing full well it could be snuffed out at any moment. "Start monitoring the alien comms," Leora instructed. "Let's see if they notice we're not quite the telepathic menaces they thought." Anya nodded, her fingers flying across the console. "I'll keep an ear out for anything resembling a diplomatic olive branch." The minutes ticked by with the kind of agonizing slowness reserved for waiting rooms and execution chambers. Leora watched the screens, the tiny flickers of progress, knowing that even a small win could turn the tide. "Jax, any word from the envoys?" Leora asked, her voice a careful balance of authority and desperation. "Nothing yet," Jax replied, the words static through the comms. "But hey, silence is better than a declaration of war, right? Or they're just planning the best way to leave us in the dust," Wex muttered, though he kept his eyes on the task at hand. "Optimism, Wex," Leora said, the words tasting strange on her tongue. "Pretend it's a new hobby." They continued their work, the tension a constant companion, each decision a potential tipping point. Leora knew they were skating on thin ice, but she also knew they didn't have the luxury of second-guessing. "Leora," Jax's voice came through, sharper now. "Got some movement on the alien channels. Might be good news." "Good news," Leora echoed, trying to remember what that felt like. "Yeah," Jax replied with a hint of a grin in his voice. "Or at least not bad news. They're talking about re-evaluating the threat level." Leora felt a weight she hadn't realized she was carrying lift slightly. It wasn't a victory lap yet, but maybe they'd at least put a pause on their doom. "Keep monitoring," Leora ordered. "Let me know if there's any change." "Will do, boss," Jax said, his voice like a lifeline. Leora turned to Wex and Anya, her resolve hardening. "We're not out of the woods yet, folks. Let's keep this ship steady and see if we can convince the universe we're not a lost cause. Hope's not a plan, but it's a start, Anya said, her voice echoing Leora's own thoughts. We'll make it through this, Leora replied, more to herself than anyone else. One way or another, the universe had dealt them a raw hand, but they were still in the game. And as long as they were, Leora wasn't about to fold. Because if there was one thing she knew, it was that the universe was a bastard, and she was determined to be a bigger one. The bridge hummed with a tense energy, like a string stretched too tight, ready to snap at the slightest provocation. Leora stood at the helm, her mind juggling possibilities like a juggler with a death wish. Somewhere out there, the universe had yet to decide whether they were its punchline or its underdog story. Got any more bright ideas? Wex asked, half buried in the guts of some ancient piece of tech that looked like it might have been used to prop open a door last century. Or are we just gonna pray the aliens have a sense of humor? I don't think they get the jokes, Anya chimed in, not looking up from her console. Their telepathic messages are more existential dread than knock-knock. Jax, the eternal bearer of bad news, interrupted. Speaking of existential dread, you might want to pick up the comms, Leora. We've got a message from an unexpected guest. Leora's eyebrows climbed skyward. Unexpected how? Like the surprise birthday party I never wanted or the surprise eviction notice I once got. More like neither. It's from an alien, specific alien. Wants to chat, Jax replied, clearly relishing the ambiguity. Claims it's willing to help us out of this mess. An alien wants to help, Wex laughed, sounding like someone who'd just found out the punchline to a cosmic joke. What's next? Pigs in space. Ignoring Wex's postulation on interstellar swine, Leora raised the comms unit to her ear. All right, let's see what our new friend has to say. Patch it through, Jax. A voice, smooth and strangely soothing, filled the bridge. Greetings, humans. I am Voss, a telepath of the Tharkian delegation. I've been monitoring your interesting situation. Interesting is one word for it, Leora said dryly. Another might be catastrophic. Indeed. However, your telepathic disturbances have caught our attention. They are unique. Unique as in fascinating or unique as in horrifying? Anya asked, her tone as curious as it was wary. A bit of both, Voss admitted. But more importantly, they present an opportunity. Opportunity? Wex echoed, suspicion lacing his words. Are we the opportunity, or is it the chance to watch us implode? Voss's laugh was a cascade of mental notes, a soft symphony of amusement. Your human creativity, your resilience, these are rare qualities. I believe we could forge a solution to the telepathic interference together. So, what's the catch? Leora pressed, not keen on signing a devil's pact without knowing the price. Catch? There is none, save for your willingness to think beyond traditional boundaries. I propose we synchronize our efforts. I can lend my telepathic abilities to stabilize the disturbances while you adjust your technology. And why would you do that? Leora asked, doubt curling around her words like smoke. Because, Voss replied, in your success lies mutual benefit. A stable alliance between us and your people could be the bridge to greater understanding. All right, Voss, Leora said, making a choice as precarious as balancing on a knife's edge. Let's see what we can do together. What do you need from us? Access to your telepathic frequency modulator, Voss replied with the casualness of someone requesting sugar for their tea. And a bit of trust. Leora hesitated, glancing at her team. Jax shrugged, Wex tapped his temple as if to say, your call, Captain, and Anya offered a nod of reluctant agreement. Okay, Leora decided, with all the optimism of a gambler betting on a three-legged horse. Wex, Anya, get the modulator ready for Voss. As Wex and Anya busied themselves, Leora kept Voss on the line. So how do you suggest we handle this synchronization? By combining your human ingenuity with my telepathic precision, Voss explained. Your technology is capable of great things, but you must be willing to approach it with an open mind. Wex snorted. Open mind? If it gets any more open, my brains are gonna fall out. That would be unfortunate, Voss replied, deadpan. The team worked with a rhythm born of necessity, each member a cog in a barely functional machine. Wex's fingers danced over the modulator, soldering bits of metal with the confidence of a man who'd made more mistakes than successes, but learned from everyone. Anya tweaked the algorithms, her mind a jumble of calculations and best guesses, while Jax monitored the comms for any sign of betrayal from their new ally. Modulators ready, Wex announced, stepping back with a flourish. Though if it blows up, I'm blaming the alien. I assure you no explosions are necessary, Voss intoned with a mental chuckle. Now, align the frequencies with my guidance. Leora watched as the modulator's lights blinked, mirroring the subtle shifts in Voss's telepathic signals. It was like watching a dance, one that could either end in harmony or a trip to the cosmic emergency room. Okay, Voss, we're aligned, Anya confirmed, her voice tense with anticipation. Then let us begin, Voss replied, and with that, a soft hum filled the bridge, the telepathic equivalent of a deep breath before a dive. Leora held her own breath as she watched the monitors, willing the chaotic storms of thought and interference to settle. Slowly, like a tide receding, the disturbances began to calm. The screens flickered, not with static but with a smooth, coherent pattern. It's working, Wex said, disbelief coloring his words. I'll be damned. Let's save the celebrations for after we're sure it sticks, Anya cautioned, though her eyes sparkled with a hint of victory. Jax, always the pragmatist, asked, What's the long game here, Voss? You help us now, but what about later? Voss's voice was as smooth as ever. Later, we discuss peaceful collaboration. But first, survival. Guess we can put away the white flags, Leora murmured, feeling a rare smile tug at her lips. The bridge was a tableau of cautious optimism, each crew member caught between disbelief and relief. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, the universe hadn't immediately smacked them down for daring to hope. Voss, you there? Leora asked, needing confirmation that their telepathic ally hadn't ghosted them. I am here, Voss replied, and it appears your crew has succeeded in stabilizing the interference. Impressive. Yeah, well, they say necessity is the mother of invention, Wex said, rubbing the back of his neck. Guess desperation is the weird ant who shows up with questionable casserole. Your analogies are as colorful as they are perplexing, Voss observed with a mental chuckle. Yet there is truth in them. Do you think the aliens will bite on this peaceful collaboration thing? Anya asked. Voss hesitated, a rare pause that spoke volumes. It is difficult to predict. Many in the delegation are cautious of your unpredictability. But with time and effort, understanding is possible. Leora nodded, her mind racing ahead to the infinite complexities of diplomatic negotiations. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. For now, I'll take any win we can get. Agreed, Voss said, his voice fading slightly. I must return to my delegation, but I will remain in contact. Good luck, humans. Thanks, Voss. Couldn't have done it without you, Leora said, and she meant it. The connection ended, leaving the bridge in a momentary silence that felt like a collective exhale. Leora looked around at her crew, seeing the weariness in their eyes, but also something new, hope. All right, team, she said, clapping her hands together. Let's get to work monitoring the situation and see if we can build on this. We've got aliens to impress and a universe to surprise. And maybe a little time to breathe, Jax suggested, his voice mellowing. Breathing's good, Wex added, especially when you're not waiting for the sky to fall. Anya leaned back in her chair, the tension bleeding from her shoulders. So, what do we do with our free time now that we're not on the brink of annihilation? How about a round of poker? Wex suggested. I promise not to cheat this time, Leora smiled, feeling the weight on her shoulders lighten ever so slightly. Why not? You've got to keep practice in for when the universe calls our bluff again. The crew chuckled, the sound a balm for their frayed nerves. It wasn't over, not by a long shot, but for now, they had a moment to savor, a pause in the chaos to remind them why they fought. As they settled in for a game, Leora allowed herself a rare moment of reflection. They'd managed to turn the tide, if only slightly, and in a universe that often seemed determined to crush them, that was nothing short of miraculous. "Here's to improbable allies and impossible odds," she toasted, raising an imaginary glass. "And to the biggest bastards in the galaxy," Wex added with a grin. Together they laughed, the sound carrying through the bridge like music, a defiant note against the vast indifference of space. And for now, that was enough. Leora stood at the helm, looking out at the chaos of the orbital ring through the bridge's wide viewport. It looked like someone had taken a cosmic sledgehammer to a once pristine structure and then decided to play a game of how many pieces can we scatter. A mess, but it was their mess. And now it was up to them to fix it. "All right, crew," she said, doing her best impression of a confident leader despite feeling like she was one missed step away from a nervous breakdown. "We've got to deploy the quantum stabilizers around this heap before we all end up as space debris." Jax leaned against a console, arms crossed and an eyebrow raised. "Quantum stabilizers. Sounds like a fancy term for duct tape and hope." Wex, half buried in a tangle of wires and circuits, piped up. "Exactly. But this is duct tape that disrupts telepathic frequencies. So you know it's got that going for it." Anya rolled her eyes but focused on her screen, tapping away with the precision of someone defusing a bomb. "As long as it doesn't blow up in our faces, I'm all for it." "Ah, where's your sense of adventure?" Wex asked, grinning like a kid about to press the big red button. "Lost it somewhere between the third and fourth sabotage attempt," Anya replied, not missing a beat. Leora cut through the banter. "We've got a window here thanks to Voss and his telepathic finesse. Let's not waste it. Wex, get those stabilizers ready, and Anya, keep an eye on the frequencies. Jax, you're on comms. Make sure our alien friend doesn't decide to bail mid-synchronization." "Got it," Jax said, adjusting the headset like a cowboy donning his hat before a showdown. The crew moved with practiced chaos, each playing their part in the orchestral mess of saving humanity's collective hide. The stabilizers were a last-ditch attempt, a cocktail of tech that blended human ingenuity with a dash of alien assistance. Wex had a knack for creating miracles out of junk, and this time, his wizardry involved repurposed ship components and a liberal amount of borrowed, alien tech. "Stabilizers are live," Wex called out, wiping his forehead with the back of his hand. "If they don't work, we might want to start praying to a god who listens." "How's it looking, Anya?" Leora asked, her eyes flicking between the monitors and the viewport, where the stabilizers glimmered like distant stars. "Telemetry is stable," Anya replied, fingers dancing over the keyboard. "For now, we're in the green." "Let's see if Voss can do his mind magic." Jax's voice piped up. "Voss is on the line, says he's ready to start the telepathic sync." "Patch him through," Leora ordered. Voss's voice filled the bridge, smooth as ever. "Humans, are you prepared to weave this chaotic symphony into harmony?" Yeah, maestro. Let's see if we can turn this noise into music," Wex quipped, clearly relishing the absurdity of their situation. "Begin the synchronization," Voss instructed, his telepathic touch guiding them like an unseen conductor. As the stabilizers hummed to life, the orbital ring shuddered, the metal creaking like an ancient beast stirring from slumber. Leora watched the monitors, teeth clenched, as the telepathic interference began to wane, the chaos unfurling into something marginally less catastrophic. "Steady," Anya murmured, her eyes fixed on the fluctuating graphs. "It's holding." "Well, I'll be damned," Jax said, straightening up as the reading stabilized. "Looks like we're not going to explode today." "A refreshing change of pace," Leora agreed, allowing herself a small smile. "Keep an eye on those readings. We're not out of the woods yet." The tension on the bridge eased, each crew member slowly letting their guard down. It was a small victory, but in their line of work, any victory was a reason to celebrate. "Voss," Leora said, addressing their invisible ally, "looks like your suggestion is working. We owe you one." "It is a step towards understanding," Voss replied, his presence like a gentle breeze, calming the lingering telepathic static. Let us hope it paves the way for further cooperation. Yeah, cooperation, Wex muttered, as long as it doesn't involve mind-reading any more of our inner monologues. Your thoughts are safe, Wex Ryden, Voss assured with what could only be described as a telepathic grin. I find them entertaining. The crew chuckled, the sound echoing around the bridge, a testament to their ability to find humor even on the brink of disaster. All right, crew, Leora said, assuming her role as ringleader of this circus once more. Let's keep these stabilizers in check and make sure our alien buddies stay friendly. And maybe now we can get back to more pressing matters, Jack suggested, like figuring out who tried to turn this ring into a scrapyard in the first place. One crisis at a time, Leora replied, her mind already spinning with the possibilities. First, we stabilize this mess. Then we deal with the saboteur. The orbital ring, for all its flaws and fractures, was a testament to human tenacity. It was a patchwork miracle, much like their crew, holding together despite every reason not to. As the stabilizers continued their work, the telepathic chaos receded, revealing the potential for something more, a chance to bridge the gap between species, to find common ground in a universe that often seemed hell-bent on division. Voss, you still with us? Leora asked, seeking the reassurance of their alien ally. I am here, Voss confirmed, his voice like a gentle whisper across the expanse. And I believe we have achieved what many thought impossible. That's humanity for you, Wex chimed in, doing the impossible just to say we can. Indeed, Voss replied, a note of admiration in his tone. I will return to my delegation with news of our success. Until then, stay vigilant. Thanks, Voss, Leora said, meaning it. The line went silent and she turned to face her crew. Okay, folks, let's keep this momentum going. The bridge buzzed with activity, each member focused on their task, the atmosphere charged with a mix of relief and determination. They'd managed to carve out a momentary reprieve, but the road ahead was far from smooth. There were still saboteurs to unmask, alliances to forge, and a universe that wouldn't hesitate to throw another wrench into their plans. But for now, they had a moment, a pause in the storm to breathe, to regroup, and to plan their next move. All right, poker's off the table, Wex declared, earning a mock groan from Jax. Can't blame a guy for trying, Jax replied, leaning back in his chair with a grin. Anya smirked. I'll take a stable orbital ring over a royal flush any day. Here's to surviving another day, Leora toasted, raising an imaginary glass once more. And to making sure tomorrow isn't the day the universe finally gets us, Wex added with a wink. Together they laughed, a defiant chorus against the vast emptiness beyond. It was a small moment, but in a world where everything was uncertain, it was enough. As they settled back into the rhythm of their duties, Leora couldn't help but feel a spark of optimism. It was a dangerous thing, hope, a flickering light that could either guide them through the dark or lead them into deeper shadows. But in the face of overwhelming odds, it was a risk worth taking. All right, team, she said, her voice carrying the weight of leadership tempered with camaraderie. Let's keep this ship flying. With that, they returned to their tasks, each step forward a testament to their resilience in the face of a universe that seemed intent on testing them at every turn. They were human, flawed, and irreverent, but they were also survivors. And for now, in this brief respite from chaos, that was more than enough. Leora stood on the bridge, surveying the scene with something akin to pride, a feeling she hadn't allowed herself in quite a while. The orbital ring, once resembling the aftermath of a cosmic car crash, was now knitting itself back together. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress, and in this universe, progress was a rare commodity. Well, folks, it looks like we've managed to duct tape this tin can back together, Leora announced, her voice a mix of relief and disbelief. And hey, it only took a telepathic alien buddy and a few near-death experiences. Jax leaned back, arms crossed, looking every bit the kind of guy who'd seen this sort of thing one too many times. Is that all? I thought we might need to throw in a couple of human sacrifices for good measure. Don't give the universe any ideas, Anya quipped, her eyes still glued to her screen. We're tempting fate just being here. Wex, who had somehow accumulated more grime than a sanitation droid on a bad day, grinned from ear to ear. Look at this beauty, he said, gesturing to the stabilizers on the monitor, their holographic outlines glowing peacefully. I'd say we've earned ourselves a nice long nap, preferably one where we're not in danger of combusting. Imagine that, a nap, Jax mused. I've forgotten what those are like. Do they still involve actual sleep, or is it mostly just lying down and waiting for disaster? Depends on what you dream about, Wex replied. But I hear the nightmares are complimentary. Leora chuckled, shaking her head. All right, enough with the doom and gloom. Let's focus on the here and now. We've got the ring stabilizing, and that's a damn miracle. Voss, you still with us? The telepathic presence of Voss brushed gently against Leora's mind, like a soft touch from across the cosmos. I am here, Leora Vance, and it seems we have achieved a significant milestone. Significant? My friend, we just performed open-heart surgery on this orbital monstrosity with chewing gum and alien tech. I'd say it's a freaking miracle. Voss's telepathic laughter was a tinkling chime in Leora's mind. Indeed, though I must admit, your human resilience never ceases to impress. Flattery will get you everywhere, Jax muttered, adjusting his headset like he was getting ready for round 2 of whatever cosmic poker game they were playing. Speaking of resilience, Anya interjected, we should consider what comes next. The saboteur, the rebuilding. There's a lot on our plate. In space, no one can hear you scream about needing a vacation, Wex added, his tone light but his eyes serious. Leora nodded, her expression turning grave despite the levity. Right. We've got peace, but that doesn't mean we can coast. We've got repairs to make and a saboteur to catch. Any ideas where to start? Jax shrugged, a motion that somehow managed to communicate both indifference and keen interest. Well, we could start by shaking down every shady character we've come across in the last few months. Shouldn't take more than a few years. Or, Anya suggested, we could outsource the detective work to someone else. I hear Sherlock Holmes is back in fashion. Sure, right after we invent time travel, Wex chimed in, wiping his hands on his already filthy jumpsuit. In the meantime, we've got our hands full with keeping this ring in one piece. Leora felt the weight of the task ahead pressing down on her, as if the entire orbital ring had decided to hitch a ride on her shoulders. All right, let's focus on the essentials. Wex, keep those stabilizers steady. Anya, monitor the telepathic frequencies. Jax, see if you can dig up anything on our mysterious saboteur. You got it, boss, Jax replied, his tone mockingly deferential as he turned his attention to the console. The bridge settled into a quiet hum of activity, each crew member absorbed in their task. It was a fragile piece, but they'd learned to value even the smallest reprieves. Leora took a deep breath, forcing herself to look beyond the immediate chaos. The rebuilt sections of the orbital ring were more than just physical repairs. They were symbolic of something greater, a chance to redefine their relationship with the universe and its myriad inhabitants. The alliance with Voss and his people was still in its infancy, but it held promise. If they could navigate the maze of misunderstandings and telepathic hiccups, perhaps there was hope for a future where humans weren't just the loudest noise in the cosmos but actual partners in its melody. Voss's voice interrupted her thoughts, a gentle nudge at her consciousness. Leora, I believe your crew has shown remarkable capability. It is refreshing. Refreshing, huh? We're not like the others you've dealt with, I take it. Your kind has a gift for adaptability. Where others see chaos, you find opportunity. Leora snorted, a sound that was half amusement, half skepticism. Opportunity's just another word for a problem that hasn't been solved yet, but I'll take the compliment. Voss's presence faded slightly, a reassuring whisper of support. Continue to surprise us, Leora Vance. I look forward to our next collaboration. We'll try not to disappoint, she replied, her words a promise to herself as much as to Voss. As she turned her attention back to the bridge, she found herself appreciating the crew's banter, their gallows humor a buoy in the churning sea of their reality. They'd been through the ringer, yet they were still standing, still laughing, still ready to face whatever the universe decided to throw at them next. "All right, team," Leora called out, drawing their attention. "Let's keep this momentum going. We've got a ring to rebuild, a saboteur to unmask, and a future to forge. No pressure." Wex grinned, a mischievous glint in his eye. "Pressure's what makes diamonds, right? Or coal dust," Jax countered, his tone dry as a desert planet. "Either way, I guess we'll sparkle." "Here's to sparkling then," Anya said, raising an imaginary glass. "And to making sure we don't end up as dust." Leora smiled, the warmth of camaraderie a balm against the vast indifference of space. "To sparkling," she echoed, the words a vow to continue fighting, to continue surviving, no matter the odds. As the crew returned to their tasks, the bridge hummed with renewed determination. They were far from finished, far from safe, but they were together. For now, that was enough. Leora allowed herself a moment to breathe, to let the weight of their recent victory sink in. It wasn't just about fixing the ring or fending off disaster. It was about proving they could, proving that despite the chaos and the odds stacked against them, humanity had a place in the universe. Not just as survivors, but as partners, as collaborators, as friends. The orbital ring was a testament, not to perfection or unity, but to the sheer stubbornness of a species that refused to go quietly into the night. It was a reminder that even in the darkest corners of space, there was light to be found, if only they had the courage to look for it. "All right, enough of the sentimental stuff," Leora declared, shaking off the introspection. "We've got work to do." Jax shot her a sidelong glance, a smirk playing on his lips. "Didn't take you for the sentimental type, Leora." "I'm not," she replied, though her eyes sparkled with something not unlike hope. "I just like to keep my options open." "Here's hoping those options include a little bit of peace and quiet," Wex said, his tone hopeful even as he knew better. Anya chuckled, the sound warm and familiar. "In this line of work, not a chance." Leora nodded, her gaze sweeping across the bridge, taking in the faces of her crew, their shared history, their shared battles, their shared future. "Let's make sure it's a future worth having," she said, her voice steady, resolute. The crew nodded, each member returning to their duties with a renewed sense of purpose. They were human, flawed, and irreverent, but they were also survivors. And in a universe that thrived on chaos, that was more than enough. As the orbital ring continued to stabilize, a glimmer of a new era began to take shape. It was a fragile thing, tentative and uncertain, but it was there, waiting to be nurtured, waiting to be built upon. Leora knew it wouldn't be easy. There were still challenges to face, still battles to be fought, but they would face them together. As long as they had each other, as long as they had their irreverent humor and their unyielding determination, they would endure. "All right, team," Leora said, her voice carrying the weight of leadership tempered with camaraderie. "Let's keep this ship flying." With that, they returned to their tasks, each step forward a testament to their resilience in the face of a universe that seemed intent on testing them at every turn. They were human, and for now, in this brief respite from chaos, that was more than enough.